And good day, beautiful people, and welcome to my Freedom Channel. My name is Axel Duncoyne, and I'm running for the Australian Federation Party in Ryan for the federal elections 2022. My research led me to realise that apocalyptic claims about climate changes are wrong. Simple as that. Environmental journalists and advocates have in recent weeks made a number of apocalyptic predictions about the impact of climate change. A guy called Bill McKibben suggested that climate-driven fires in Australia had made koalas functionally extinct. Extinction Rebellion said billions will die and life on Earth is dying. Even some claim the collapse of civilization may have already begun. The Green New Deal sponsor in the US, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, said the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. But British psychologists have also said that children are increasingly suffering from anxiety from the frightening discourse around climate change. I also care about getting the facts and science right. And in the recent month, I've been looking for real facts and information to correct inaccurate and apocalyptic news media coverage of fires, for example, in the Amazon and fires in California, both of which have been improperly presented as resulting primarily from climate change. Journalists and activists alike, to me, have an obligation to describe environmental problems honestly and accurately, even if they fear that doing so will reduce their news value or salience with the public. There is good evidence that the catastrophic framing of climate change is self-defeating because it alienates and polarizes many people. And exaggerating climate change risks, I would say, distracting us from other important issues, including ones we might have more near-term control over. I feel the need to say this up front because I want the issues I'm about to raise to be taken seriously and not dismissed by those who label as climate deniers or climate delayers anyone who pushes back against exaggeration. With that out of the way, let's look whether the science supports what's being said. First, there is absolutely no credible scientific body that has ever said that climate change threatens the collapse of civilization, much less the extinction of the human species. There is robust evidence of disasters displacing people worldwide. IPCC talked about that, but limited evidence that climate change or sea level rise is the direct cause. Low socio-economic development and low capabilities of the state are judged to be substantially more influential. Economic development has made us less vulnerable, which is why there was a 99.7% decline in the death toll from natural disasters since its peak in 1931. In 1931, 3.7 million people died from natural disasters. 3.7 million. In 2019, however, if I may say 11,000 did. And that decline occurred over a period where the global population has quadrupled. So what about sea level rise? Well, IPCC estimates the sea level could rise about 60 centimeters by 2100. Does that sound apocalyptic or even unmanageable to you? Consider that 1/3 of the Netherlands is below sea level already, and some areas are 7 meters below sea level. You might object that Netherlands is rich while Bangladesh is poor, but the Netherlands adapted to living below sea level 400 years ago. Technology has improved quite a bit since then, you must admit. So what about claims also of crop failure, famine, and mass death? Well, that's science fiction, guys, not science. Humans today produce enough food for 10 billion people. There's only 8 million of us, so that's 25% more than we actually need. And scientific bodies predict increases in that share, not declines. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, forecast that crop yields increasing 30% by 2050, and the poorest part of the world, like the sub-Saharan Africa, are expected to see increases of 80 to 90%. So nobody is suggesting climate change won't negatively impact the crop yields. No, it could, but such declines should be put maybe back into perspective. The wheat yields increased 100 to 300% around the world since 1960s, while a study of 30 models found that yields would decline by 6% only for every 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature around the world. So IPCC anticipates climate change will have a modest impact on economic growth. By 2100, IPCC projects the global economy will be like 300 to 500 times larger than it is today. Both IPCC and the Nobel-winning Yale economist William Nordhaus predict that warming of 2.5 and 4% Celsius degrees would reduce gross domestic products GDP by 2% and 5% over that same period. So we'll still be ahead. So if we want to save endangered species, we need to do so because we care about wildlife for spiritual, ethical, or aesthetic reasons, not survival ones. And exaggerating the risk and suggesting climate change is more important than things like habitat destruction are totally, in my mind, counterproductive. We better not be building home near, say, for example, forest. We should also managing the fires and wood fuel growth within the forest as well. Australian climate scientist called Tom Wigley said what he thought of the claim that climate change threatens civilization. He said, "It really does bother me because it's wrong. All these young people have been misinformed." Scientists and activists need to exaggerate in order to get the public's attention. Part of what bothers me about the apocalyptic rhetoric by climate activists is that it is often accompanied by demands that poor nations be denied the cheap sources of energy they need to develop. And I've found that many scientists share these concerns. If you want to minimize carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by, say, 2070, you might want to accelerate the burning of coal in India, for example, today. You've got to come up with some kind of middle ground where you do reasonable things to mitigate the risk and try at the same time to lift people out of poverty and make them more resilient. We shouldn't be forced to choose between lifting people out of poverty and doing something for the climate. But happily, there's plenty of middle ground between climate apocalypse and climate denial.